Hey everyone. So I told this story at a recent masterclass that I ran online about emotional intelligence, of course. And I want to tell you guys kind of the nuts and bolts of what happened in this situation with a parent I coached, because it's going to kind of set the scene really nicely for what we're talking about today, which is responding versus reacting. So this is like key in the emotional intelligence kind of space. Not just with kids and parents, but between partners or spouses, people in the workplace, friends, everything. So let me tell you this story. The parent I coached was explaining how her partner was having a very stressful day, one of the days where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. We've all had those. And what happened was the kids were arguing, and she explained that her partner grabbed a garbage bag from the cupboard, yelled at the kids, anything that is not up off the floor in 2 minutes is going in the garbage bag, it's going in the trash. End of story, like hurry up kind of thing. So obviously their kids like froze and quickly got to, and there was lots of big emotions, but some toys went in the bag and went in the bin. So she described that essentially he had that reactivity, that knee-jerk kind of reaction of, right, I'm doing this thing because you guys are not listening. And she actually explained as well that the very next day, the kids were arguing over something very similar, I think like the TV remote from memory. And she noticed what happened, what he did, that kind of punishment, in a sense, didn't solve the problem that, he probably wanted it to. He wanted the kids to stop arguing, to learn a lesson. Like if you argue, then you're going to lose things. You're not going to have your toys kind of thing. Sometimes we think that if we have a big enough punishment, let's say, that our kids will like finally learn the lesson. It'll be drilled in, and then we won't have to like deal with that behavior ever again. So I am not sure if you have had a similar situation like that. Maybe it wasn't the toys or it wasn't the garbage bag, but you or your partner or someone has had one of those, huge explosive kind of reactions, just that knee jerk, like reactivity, that impulsive, right? That's it. I don't care. Everyone out. Like, when we just totally lose our mind. So that's what we are talking about today. We're talking about responding versus reacting, because they have very different outcomes. And we're going to kind of look at how do we move from sometimes that place of reactivity into having a more measured, more intentional, maybe a more thought out response, especially in those challenging moments with our kids. Before we begin, I do want to acknowledge the Darug Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record this podcast. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, elders, and ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and stand in solidarity towards a shared future. Okay, so I hope it goes without saying that what I'm going to talk about, and in any of these episodes really, my goal or my aim is not to get you to be like this picture perfect, emotionally calm, regulated parent 100% of the time. It's just not possible. We know it's not realistic. We know it's not possible. And I think like on the surface level, consciously, we know that, right? I don't think anyone is trying to attain perfection now. We're well aware of things, traps like the perfectionism and trying to, never make a mistake. We know about teaching kids about mistakes. So that stuff's all well and good. But I sometimes think that it's too easy of a trap to fall into, especially when you're someone like you and me who are probably reading and listening to stuff like this around parenting and conscious or respectful or emotionally intelligent parenting. If we're doing that a lot and we're looking into, or we're working on our self-development and things, like it's a really easy trap to fall into, to think I'm learning all this stuff, I should be implementing it. I want to be the best person I can be or the best parent I can be. And like, I even have to remind myself sometimes when I have one of those days when I'm like, Steph, you don't even have to have it all together. Like, yes, you are reading, writing, speaking, like teaching, on all of this stuff. But even I don't need to have everything all together and be a picture perfect parent all the time. When I do fall into that trap, I get very stressed. I feel very frazzled. I beat myself up. And the people around me kind of cop it, because I'm just like on the edge. So I guess just I wanted to kind of put that disclaimer in, that reminder that even though we're going to be talking about how to respond more thoughtfully in challenging or stressful situations rather than just react impulsively, you're going to still have moments after today, after listening to this, where you do flip your lid and you're like, man, like, come on, why? I just listened to that thing, or I just read that thing, or I'm supposed to be doing this better. No, you're not. You are exactly where you're supposed to be at this point in time and this point in your journey of life or of parenting. Like, I'm not going to harp on about it, but I kind of wanted to just drop that in there because I know a lot of people listening to this podcast will be listening to and reading other, parenting or self-development content and material. And yeah, I don't want you to fall into that trap because it's a waste of time, right? Benefits no one. Okay, let's jump into it. In the emotional intelligence world, respond, don't react is a pretty key principle. It's really about how we can make more thoughtful, measured, intentional actions or language or behavior rather than impulsive, knee-jerk kind of reactions, right? We want to move away from flipping our lid and doing and saying things that we later regret. I'm not even going to edit that. I'm just going to leave that in. You guys can have a laugh. No, like I just said, I'm not perfect at all. Okay. A few things that I want to get across and kind of discuss with you guys. The first maybe part of this is, or I think what it has to come first is our awareness and our understanding of our own emotions and of what they are doing, like what's happening in certain situations. And by the way, you're going to have patterns, like with your kids or with a particular child or in a particular situation, you're going to have patterns. Maybe it's like bedtime or the school morning rush, like you guys will know. Anyway, so let's talk a bit about understanding and awareness. The very first step, I think, is that we have to be aware of our emotions and understand why we feel a certain way with different things that are going on at home or in our life, right? You have to be aware of your emotions. A lot of us are not aware because we kind of learned, for want of a better word, we absorbed or like we started to learn not to share our emotions and not to think about our emotions and that they were silly, weird, embarrassing, fluffy, awkward kind of thing. Anyway, basically, you guys know what I'm saying. We learn to kind of shove them down and just get on with it. The thing is, self-awareness actually really, really helps you to be able to pause and reflect in a situation, especially like on the fly, with a bit of practice, of course. It helps you to be able to pause and reflect rather than just reacting immediately. So another part of this is that we need to be able to identify our triggers. This means like understand what creates this emotional response, this like reactivity, the flipping of your lid or the seeing red, whatever you want to call it. Like, what does that to you? Is it particular behaviors of your kids? Is it when they use hurtful language or they hurt a sibling or they seem to be disrespectful or they are not listening or they're not cooperating? Like, the list goes on. By identifying these triggers and the things that usually make you flip your lid, you're actually in an extraordinarily better position to then decide how to respond thoughtfully in a way that is actually going to get you towards that better outcome that you want. Maybe it's connected listening with your kids, or it's their cooperation, or it's just avoiding like a power struggle. So you have to know what your triggers are. Otherwise, you're just going to feel like you're caught off guard every second and you're going to erupt. So if you think back to the brief story I told at the start of this episode about the parent who had that kind of eruption, they exploded, grabbed the garbage bag, put the kids' toys in there. That lack of awareness of the building of his emotions, like the building over, the day, or the build up of maybe he had asked the kids once, twice, three times, and they said, yeah, later, or no, I don't want to, or whatever. What is it that really grinds your gears? And also, maybe this parent had a trigger of mess. Like, I actually know a lot of parents, I've worked with a lot of parents who mess is a trigger for them. It's something that really frustrates them, really makes them feel stressed. Like, mess on the outside or untidiness at home can kind of make us feel on this inner level like turmoil and stress, like things are not in order, if that makes sense. So anyway, I'm getting distracted, but I think that's really helpful to think about. If you know mess is a trigger, if you know noise is a trigger, if you know you have some other kind of sensory difference or sensory preference that is hard for you to handle, then that's got to be like top of your list kind of thing of how can I mitigate this? How can I notice it? How can I avoid it? How can I limit it? How can I work around it and stuff like that? Okay, another really powerful piece to this is the concept of pausing and reflecting. Again, who has time for this? No, who got taught this? I don't think a lot of us have learned to slow down, to hit the pause button, to be more aware or to notice or to be more mindful. Like this is stuff that at least I am learning and reading about, and it's in my circles and I'm seeing it online, like being mindful and slowing down. I just think, maybe just in the Western world, at least, this is not how we have been kind of raised, right? We've got to get the work done. We've got to push through sickness. We've got to be productive. Like all that stuff is glorified anyway. So I think that's really unhelpful. But I think going back to pausing and reflecting, this is about kind of like being able to take a moment before you respond in a situation with your kids or with your partner, right? Take a moment. Like I talk about circuit breakers. I'm like, what do you need to do? Practice it not in the heat of the moment, right? By the way, what do you need to do to get a pause for yourself that could just be a few seconds? It doesn't have to be long. It allows you to process some of those emotions. It allows you to think, oh my God, I'm really bloody triggered. Like, I feel like erupting or, rattling or shaking or like punching. I don't know, whatever you feel like doing. It buys you time to think about kind of like what is the best course of action here? Or maybe what would I usually do that would typically end in a power struggle or a yelling match or, basically not end well. We can also, within this space, if we just, honestly, it can just be a few seconds, right? It provides you a bit of time to reflect on the potential consequences or the potential outcome of whatever you're about to do or say next. Like, is it going to go down the route of a power struggle and your child says, I don't want to pack it away. And you go, I've asked you to pack it away. This lounge room is our shared space. Now do it. Or I'm the parent. And they go, but you always make me. And I'm in the middle of my show and you never care. And then you're like, you know what I don't care about? Your toys, pick them up. Like, I can just see. I can just see how this stuff, like, we're all human. I want to reiterate that we're all going to have moments where we go bounce, 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 bing, bong, and then it ends in a yelling match or a power struggle. Like that serves no one. The thing we want to get done, like the tidying of the lounge room, for example, doesn't get done. And then both parties feel pretty awful and not happy with each other and very uncooperative toward one another. So buying a bit of time with this pausing and reflecting, it helps you to switch on that logical, rational part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, where you make good decisions, where you think about the impact of your actions on your kids or the other person. Like it actually is so, so powerful, but we just fly by that usually, especially when our emotions are really heightened. And so we are not thinking about, our next, step. We're just thinking about how mad we are and how rude our child is and so on. So reflect on how is what you do or say about to affect the situation, and is that going to be helpful or not? A lot of the time it's not going to be helpful. It's actually going to make things worse. We talk about the concept of adding fuel to the fire. That's what we do a lot of the time when we kind of like pull rank, so to speak, on our kids. We're like, well, I don't care. Well, I'm putting food on your table. Well, I, have a roof over your head and I've bought all these toys for you. I don't have to buy them for you. It can go down that track very quickly. Okay, so if we have a little bit of time and we use some kind of circuit breaker, if we maybe even remove ourselves from the situation, sometimes we're like, you know what, I don't need to nut this out and nip it in the bud right here, right now. I'm going to come back to the situation. You do not know how powerful that can be. It allows you, like I said, the pause and reflect. It allows you to choose a more thoughtful response. Something when your brain is actually more switched on, so your emotions are not running the show, you get to consider your options. You get to think about, well, what do I want my child to do? Why? Like, is that realistic? Is it fair? Are they in the middle of something? Can I choose a better time? Could I make it a bit more playful and fun? Like, you have time to consider all these different options. Instead of just reacting impulsively, you can think about the different ways to handle the situation. then you get to choose like an option that is way more constructive, way more productive, probably a lot more respectful, and you're going to get like a good outcome. I think this also helps you sometimes to stay a lot more calm and composed rather than like buzzing up here. So like, heightened when you're just flooded with these thoughts of how rude, how dare she, I can't believe it. They never help. He's always like this, blah, 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 blah. Another really powerful piece of learning to respond more thoughtfully and buying yourself time, it actually really helps you to communicate more effectively with your kids, which does 99% of the time, I want to say, it avoids those yelling matches and the power struggles and the push and pulls. I did an episode not that many weeks ago on communication, and I kind of like cheekily named it something like you're really like, most of us suck at communicating with our kids, something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but I know how helpful and how beneficial it is when we effectively communicate with our kids, meaning we're using like clear language. We're actually telling them why we want them to do something or why it's not okay to do something. When we can convey that message in a more calm, regulated, like a warm tone that makes sense, and we catch our child like, in the kind of green zone where they're receptive, then most often than not, we avoid these like escalating tensions and arguments and things like that. Especially if you can like dial up your empathy in these moments. Like you can't do that when you're, about to blow. You have zero empathy. Like you do not care about that other person and what they're going through or what, like you're just fuming inside, right? So you have to buy yourself some time. Then it's like your brain will switch on that part of your cortex that has access to like perspective taking and empathy and validating that other person is doing the best that they can, or they're not ready yet, or they need more time, or they're feeling rushed, or not heard, whatever that thing is, whatever that their perspective is. So empathy and understanding. Oh, I know it sounds like such a simple, like, oh, yeah, I can be empathetic. Like, I get what my kid is going through, or I understand what my partner is, they're busy, but so am I. If you try to understand the perspective of that other person involved in the situation, you're in a much better position to respond with more empathy, because when we think about the other person and what's happening for them or what's going on in their situation in this moment in time, we're getting outside of our own brain and our own experience, which is like, most of the time, the most important thing that's happening in the situation. Nothing's ever resolved when it's all about one person. So this is kind of taking it to like the next level, is this concept after we've had a moment with our kids, maybe, or a partner, right? Maybe let's say we have just had an argument with our partner about the division of chores, or like tasks that need to be done at home. The trigger can be this like feeling of resentment or feeling unsupported, or like it's all on your shoulders, or you're doing the lion's share, things like that. Typical reaction is like arguing, obviously, maybe even nagging or being passive aggressive, or even giving the silent treatment and like stonewalling. If you've just had an argument about that, like, I always have to do this and you come home so late and then I've already got the dinner and, all you do is walk in and come down, sit down and eat. Like, if you have had those arguments, maybe where you have said or done something that you later regret and you think, oh, I took it too far, or oh, that wasn't fair, take a moment to kind of reflect on what went down, reflect on like, what can I learn from that? How did I show up? What else could I have done? Why did I react so strongly there? Like, this reflection actually helps you to like improve your emotional intelligence over time, because you're like building in the space to actually adapt and improve. This is really hard stuff. Like, we have to make ourselves do this. No one is going to make you do this. You can start to actually use these experiences and these moments, even though they're really uncomfortable, to adapt and refine your responses in future situations, because you're going to have similar arguments or disagreements. You're not going to see things the same as your partner or your kids. That's just normal. But if you do this kind of reflecting and you don't have to do it like with anyone. You can just do it yourself. You can journal, you can like get it out of your brain down on paper. You could vent it, or as I like to kind of say, healthily express and release it to a friend. As long as they're not saying, yeah, what an a-hole, like I can't, but you need to like split up. You don't want something that's unhelpful. But I think taking this time to kind of reflect and have this space to grow just for yourself, it does help you grow emotionally and handle situations much more calmly and effectively and productively down the track. Because like I said, we're always going to have these moments where we have the potential to blow up. We have the potential to be so frustrated or feel so unheard or unsupported or not listened to, whatever that is. We're going to have those moments. So are you going to keep like repeating the loop like Groundhog Day, or are you going to do something about it and think, this keeps coming up? We keep arguing about this. I keep having this trigger. Like these are like golden opportunities for us to actually grow and to kind of evolve past these triggers that maybe are like 5 years old or older. So the awesome thing is that by focusing on responding where possible, like when we have the space and the capacity to do it, and we have the intention and the awareness, when we focus on responding rather than just reacting, we're actually starting to manage our emotions better. We're starting to improve our relationships, and we're making more thoughtful, like mindful, intentional decisions in our interactions. So I start to see so many shifts and changes with the parents that I work with when they start to get this and it makes sense and they start to put intention behind it. Because like I said, right at the start, like all it begins with is this awareness and understanding of what our emotions are doing, how we feel them, how they come up and what they feel like in our body, being aware of why we feel a certain way, and then identifying our triggers. Something I do want to kind of mention, after we have a tense situation or an argument or a moment where we have flipped our lid and then we feel awful or we still feel angry, we're still simmering, take yourself off to a separate room, somewhere where you're away from that person who you've just argued with. Take some time before you jump back into your chores or your work or whatever you're doing. Do not scroll. Do not go into your emails. Like, don't just think, I'm so frustrated. Like, I can't believe it. Let's see what's on Netflix. Like, just don't do that. Trust me. Just give yourself 5 minutes. If you have to lock yourself in the bathroom away from devices and TVs and phones, like if you have to do that and just sit on a closed toilet lid seat, like do that, because you're buying yourself more time for your cortisol and your adrenaline to kind of be absorbed by your cells. So you're calming down. You might also want to or need to do something extra to kind of help regulate your nervous system if you're still feeling like you're like buzzing, right? I do something called EFT tapping, which is very quick and simple. I have a course. Maybe I'll put the link in the show notes. You go onto stephaniepinto.com/courses, or you just head to the course page. I've got about 5 or so courses. One of them is EFT tapping, and it's just a 1-hour masterclass on it. So I use this, and you can do it in the bathroom. You can do it whilst you're driving. You can do it anywhere that you're feeling, I want to say, frazzled, frustrated, or really mad, or even anxious or fearful. And it's a very simple, effective, science-based regulation strategy. So that's something that I do. I do encourage you, even if it's not that, even if it's like breathing, like box breathing, right? Even if it's like a mantra or an affirmation or journaling, maybe not in the bathroom, but like in your bedroom, doing something intentional to help yourself regulate, come back down to earth and switch your logical, rational brain on, because you want to go out back into your family or your workplace not feeling like you are still simmering and like plotting that other person's demise. Don't do that. And if you can, maybe this is like 2.0, if you can muster up a little bit of empathy and that real attempt to put yourself in that other person's shoes, because you know why you're upset. Why was that other person upset? Or why were they uncooperative? Or why were they not listening? Or why were they getting mad at you? Everyone gets mad for a reason. Everyone gets frustrated or feels unheard or like they're not being able to assert themselves. We all have reasons for our emotions. All of our experiences are valid. Does not matter if you can't see why or not. It goes for a 2-year-old, it goes for a 20-year-old, anyone. So if you can, when you have calmed a little bit, you'll be able to kind of switch on that empathetic part of your brain and see the situation from that other person's point of view. I'm telling you, this is gold. If you can do it, it is gold. The amount of times that I have done that and then thought, oh my God, like I was way too, like I was rude, I was harsh, I rushed them, or I pulled something out from the past, or I, threw them under the bus. There are times when I think, okay, didn't handle that well. I played a huge part in that. And then I have to like suck it up and put my big girl pants on and go and apologize. I hate that. Still a work in progress. But man, even if you just start doing this little bit by little bit, the other people in your life, especially the people in your family, are going to be like, whoa, like I noticed that. They might not say it, but they're going to notice it. It's going to be a big deal to them. And you're going to start to see your relationships really shift. I actually really love this for like between parent and kids. I mean, for lots of reasons. But I love it because if we can do that, just think of the skills that we're modeling to our kids. We're modeling this awareness, this ability to pause, the time we take to reflect, the repair, the making amends, the apologizing, heaps of stuff. I have shown and teach both of my kids tapping, breathing. Like they know about these things. It doesn't mean they use them all the time, but they're aware of them and they know there are these coping strategies out there. And there are these things that we have to be mindful of. Like I talk about the volcano that builds up inside and then can blow up. And both of my kids, maybe one more so than the other, actually, will say, Mom, my volcano is at 75%. Tell him or her to get off or to stop doing that or to give it back. And I'm like, look at that. Look at you talking about your emotions and your body and your nervous system and your volcano. I love it. I'm going to leave it there. I hope you took a lot away from that. If you took anything away, just take away respond rather than react. It takes some practice, but even just that kind of awareness that there is this thing, there is this ability for us to be more responsive, more thoughtful and mindful, rather than just like letting our emotions take over. Instead of doing that, like there are other actually ways you can handle situations, and they're really, really powerful. Okay, I would love to hear if you found that helpful. I would love to hear your questions. I don't know if you guys have seen a couple of the episodes where I've read out and like answered some questions that people have sent me on social media. So please go and do that. If you're on Instagram, I'm at emotionally.intelligent.parent. And also you will find me on my website. You'll find me on Facebook. If you are listening to this in July of 2024, please get a free ticket to my second annual Chaos to Connection Parenting Conference. It is coming up very soon. It actually starts July 22nd and it runs for 5 days. We have 34 worldwide, world-renowned speakers and experts in their field: parenting, child development, psychology, so many different areas. And we have beautiful sessions. They're essentially like a cross between an interview and a coaching session. And they've all provided a gift for you as well. And it's all for free. You can sign up for $0. You can get the full week's worth of all 30 something sessions. And if you want them for life and you want extended access and courses and coaching with my co-host Lara and I, then you can upgrade to the VIP, but you don't have to. I'm going to put that link below. It's chaos2connectionconference.com. 2 is the number 2. But please look in the show notes or just reach out to me. It's pretty much all over our socials, and we would love you to get a free ticket. It starts very soon. We hope to see you guys there. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you guys for the next episode.